Well, hey there. I hope you guys are doing well. And today's topic is the Nikkor 35mm f1.4 manual focus lens for the f mount. And I have a very early version. This particular lens right here says Nippon Kagaku on it, thus indicating that it's very early production. And I'm very, very happy with this lens. It is, Nikon makes quite a few really nice 35mm focal length lenses, and this is a darn good one. Quite possibly my favorite, but well, I don't know. A little bit of background. This lens was introduced in, here we go. Introduced in May of 1970, according to the photosynthesis website, which I'll link to down below. That's a fairly thorough website when it comes to specs regarding Nikon lenses. It's generally regarded as highly reliable. Although the 1001 Nights blog indicates introduction in 1971. Anyway, it was either May of 1970 or at some point in 1971. I'm going to go with May 1970. It has a 9-element in 7-group configuration. It has 9 aperture blades, or it was introduced with 9 aperture blades, which remained the case until 1973. Then it went from 9 blades to 7. The K series, which was introduced in December 1975, introduced a couple of changes. It removed the Thorium from the glass. The pre-AI series or the Auto Nikkor pre-AI series prior to the K series had thorium elements, or thorium infused glass elements. So that is a radioactive substance, which was fairly commonly used in the 1960s and early 1970s. Famously, the Super Takumar 50mm f1.4 has a thorium rear element. That's probably one of the most famous lenses with a thorium element. The 1001 Nights blog also indicates that though the basic construction remained unchanged, the glass material and curvature were changed to improve performance at open aperture. So the glass material indicating the removal of thorium, and apparently the curvature, the surface curvature of some of the elements were slightly modified for the purpose of improving performance at open aperture. Then in 1977, the minimum aperture went from f22 to f16. Also, the AI kit went to f16. So, for example, you'll see this lens here has a proper factory AI conversion. It is a very early production lens. We know this because it says Nippon Kagaku on it. Also, it has the metal focusing ring. So we know that this was introduced as a pre-AI lens. And it has a proper factory AI conversion, but you'll notice that the smallest aperture is 16. Now we know for a fact that this lens originally had an f22 aperture. When they convert the configuration from pre-AI to AI, they swap out the aperture ring. So how do I know that this originally went to 22? Well, right here. If I take a look at the hyperfocal marks. Okay, if I take a look at the hyperfocal marks, 16 is color-coded blue. That line's blue. What's that line? That's f22. That's the hyperfocal mark for f22. That's for 16. Yellow is for 11, pink is for 8, and green is for 4. So this right here is the hyperfocal mark for f22, which this lens no longer has because it was AI converted. Although originally when this lens left the factory, it had an aperture ring with a setting for f22. Which I'm given to understand, at the time this lens was introduced, it had the widest aperture range of any Nikkor, going from 1.4 to 22. At that time, almost all Nikkor lenses, well, I don't know if almost all, but certainly in this focal length, up until you got up into the telephoto focal lengths, topped out at, or bottomed out if you prefer, at f16. But this one did not. This one was gifted in f22. So let's see here. So the AI kit was modified. So the AI lens and the AI kit were modified from f22 to f16. Then, with the introduction of the AIS series in 1981, it went back to 9 aperture blades. Okay, so that's a little bit of background information about this lens. Now this obviously is the pre-AI thorium-based one, and I'm very happy with it. It has a bit of a warm color cast. When I first got this lens, it had the lens was it was yellow. You could see a pronounced yellow. In fact, you can still see it's a little yellowish. Although I had this thing on the sun for quite some time. Is it a little yellow? That's a white piece of paper. So it's still yellow. Can you see the yellowishness? Maybe it belongs out in the sun a little longer. Maybe. I'm not so sure about that. I had it out in the sun for quite a while to lighten it up. But it does have a bit of a warm color cast to it. So the images produced by this lens are rather warm. Although that color cast, I have found, is far more pronounced on digital than film. When I shoot this lens on my D700, I can really see the color cast. Whereas on Ektar or Fuji 400H, it's not nearly as noticeable. Also, another interesting thing about this particular lens, it almost never flares. In preparation for this video, I went out and shot some obligatory bokeh shots, just nothing of any particular importance, just some shots including various elements of background bokeh, which I'll be uploading to Flickr immediately after finishing recording this video, and linking down below, obviously. As part of the exercise, not only did I shoot some bokeh shots, but I tried to flare the lens, and I tried to flare the lens by shooting with the sun in the upper right-hand corner of the frame. A strong June sun under a cloudless sky, not near the upper right-hand corner of the frame, but like in the upper right-hand corner of the frame. You can't see that in the photograph because obviously it's all blown out because I was shooting on a DSLR. But I was deliberately trying to flare the thing, and it did produce a small sliver of green crescent flare, which I pointed out on the on the photograph you'll see on Flickr if you follow the link. But that's about it. That's as much of a flare as I've ever gotten out of this lens. And I shot it that day, actually yesterday, with a bare front element, no filter, no hood, nothing. So that's really impressive. And if you take a look at the other photographs I've got on my Flickr page, I've got about 50 of them, all shot on film. Some of which do have obvious, the sun is obviously close to the frame, and there's no flare, not even a hint. It's pretty impressive. So I'm very happy with this lens. I think the rendering characteristics, the sharpness, and the flare resistance are just phenomenal. One thing that is a bit curious about this, I forgot to mention. When this lens was introduced, you'll notice the writing around the front element says Nikkor-N. It doesn't say Nikkor-N-C. However, the 1001 Nights blog indicates that when this lens was introduced, it was given the Nikon's first version of multi-layer coating, of multi-coating. Later, a few years later, a C was added. So you will see some pre-AI versions that have a C. I think around 1975-ish, around there, they added a C. I'm not sure what that meant. The 1001 Nights blog entry is silent. The photosynthesis website doesn't make any notes as to why a C was absent in the earlier versions when it was in fact multi-coated. And the fact that it was multi-coated is certainly indicated by the fact that this thing is it's virtually flare-proof. So I mean, maybe the thorium has something to do with that. I really don't know. But some versions of this lens do have a C, others do not, but my experience is that I don't know that really makes a whole heck of a lot of difference. This is one of the most flare-resistant lenses I've ever shot. And this is a very early version. The serial numbers and characteristics indicate production in the first year of production. I mean, this lens was made in either 1970 or 1971. The optical formula was largely unchanged. I mean, there was modification with the introduction of the K series. The K series, of course, refers to Nikon pre-AI lenses with rubber focusing rings. From 1975 to 1977, there were a series of Nikkor lenses made with rubber focusing rings, but which were pre-AI. And collectors refer to those as the K series for reasons I'm not quite sure. Okay, so that about covers what I know about this lens. And have a look at the links down below. I will link to the 1001 Nights blog entry. I will link to the photosynthesis site. And you'll have to scroll down a bit to see the section detailing the specs on this particular 3514. And naturally, I will link to my Flickr account where I've got quite a few images shot with this lens, so you'll have a bit of an idea of what to expect. Okay, hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please subscribe and check out the links below. As a courtesy to subscribers, I do not monetize my videos for 30 days following release. So if you'd like to subscribe and hit the notifications bell, you can see all of my content commercial free for 30 days. All right. Thanks now. Have a great one. Take care. Bye-bye.